Good afternoon, Jack. There's a perception that with his protectionism and rhetoric, President Donald Trump is increasingly isolating the U.S. alliance partners. How much of the speech earlier on today will add to this perception?
Indeed, so a very tense beginning to this NATO summit. The US President Donald Trump arriving, having a breakfast with the NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, and essentially putting all the pressure directly on Angela Merkel, his German counterpart. What the US President essentially said is that because the US spends about 4.2% of its GDP on defence spending, which is well over the 2% pledge that NATO alliance members say that they will pay by 2024, that essentially when Germany goes out and signs a pipeline deal worth $11 billion with Russia, that's a problem for the United States, because they believe that their defence spending targets, that their agreements through NATO are supporting European allies in their defence of Russian concerns, Russian military concerns. So he's really come out swinging. Now, for Angela Merkel, who grew up in East Germany under the Soviet Union, this is obviously going to be a comment that's not going to strike any nice rings with her. She is believed to be having a meeting with Donald Trump on the sidelines of this summit. We understand that in just over a couple of hours that those two will meet. That Donald Trump intends to drag her to the side of the summit, and also French President Emmanuel Macron as well. We'll have to wait and see what comes out of it, whether he makes any more comments of this nature. We knew that this was going to be a testy summit. We understood that the US President coming into this was not going to play friendly with the NATO allies. America isn't happy that NATO allies don't spend as much as they do on their defence, which is part of this alliance's sort of makeup. Also, it has to be understood that without America's influence and without NATO, there is a very difficult situation for the Europeans as far as defence goes. They need the Americans to really lead the NATO operation, which is really the bedrock of European defence. Now, what's also interesting is that after this summit, the US President will head to London, where he has already said that he believes that the UK government is in disarray. Theresa May, the UK Prime Minister, has had to completely reshuffle her cabinet after a number of senior resignations over the agreement that she came to on Brexit, that many of the sort of Brexiteers, those in favour of Brexit, weren't up for. And so he heads there in a difficult situation, and after that he's going to head to Helsinki to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin. The concern among European allies is that Donald Trump is going to buddy up to the Russian president, make friends with him. He says that he thinks Vladimir Putin is just fine, that they'll get on fine, but is being heavily critical of his US allies. He's used rhetoric like saying that America was a piggy bank being robbed by everyone, and that sometimes the allies were worse than the enemies. All of this in the run-up to this summit. So there is a lot of tension here, and we'll have to wait and see whether the US really remains committed to this military alliance as it has done. It's been, as I say, the bedrock of security for Europe and indeed for America, especially on the European continent, for 70 years in the post-war period.
Parrock, our Brussels correspondent, giving us an update on that summit there. He is following that story and will keep us updated.